All right, so here's some of the final details we did on this thing. You can see the front where the gun is. You can see windshields that were added. I had to add a little part on the bottom to make them fit the curve better. You can see that the gun mounts, well, you maybe can't see, but there's little bits of elastic on there that I painted and little pulleys I made. That's in addition to what's in the kit. And then you can see that front part, which I think is a bomb aimer, I think. This is the nose skid, which went together fine. That front looks funny, but that's the only way you can make a piece of paper curve. The inside, along with those two gray parts, have a little piece of brass in them in order to give them a little bit of strength, because those get attached under the nose so that you have a way to not tip over. Apparently these and Gotas and things turned over often. So I drilled a couple holes where they're supposed to go and put some glue on the edge, some super glue, and then these fit right in. Of course, when you test them, they fit right in, but these ultimately went in fine. And then you get one end in and then squeeze the other one, get that in, and then just set that, nuzzle that piece up there. As it turns out, I actually am missing a piece, so we'll see that later. But anyway, this is straight and true and nice. Little shot of zip kicker, and it's together. So that's what it looks like. And the front end, I wish I had probably that would be something to just make out of wood and paint it gray rather than having those little accordion splits in it. But again, it's a paper model, and that's the way it's, supposed to be. If I built it again, I might change that, but I didn't because I was lazy. But it's kind of neat how it comes together, I think. Not too upset at all. So, there it is. Looks good. There's still a lot of little things to do on it. The biggest thing being the bomb shackles underneath, and a couple of bombs have to be added. And this is the hardest part of the model because it's basically done, but you keep doing little things to make it better. So, for example, I took the wings and I copied them onto a piece of just thin typing paper on the printer we have, and I was able to then cut strips of the close to the correct color out. And what I'm using these for is to cover some unseemly seams that are my fault, along the wings where the wing panels come together. Those things look pretty bad and are pretty obvious. And so I basically cut them and then you glue them over those places. Now, they really shouldn't be there. The real airplane didn't have those. Some airplanes do, like a Stearman. That happens on a Stearman. There's a piece of metal that goes over that joint, but I don't think this one had that. But my wing panel joints aren't as beautiful as they need to be to look really good. I've seen this model done. It looks museum quality and unbelievable. This one isn't one of those. But anyway, so what I did was resort to a little bit of creative smoke blowing, and all I do is add a little glue to the opposite side, and then once I got glue smeared on there, go ahead and put it over the seams. And it's just like I did on the fuselage seam that I had when the back, rear, and the forward sections came together. It just makes it look a little bit better. I mean, again, you shouldn't have to do this. If you do it right, you shouldn't have to do this. But in my case, I had issues. And so this is a way to make it so your eye doesn't go directly to that. Smear it down. You can see the colors are slightly off, but I still think they're better than having a big gouge there. Looks like the Marianas Trench or something. So now it doesn't. So I was pretty pleased with that. And you can see I did the same thing on the top of the wing. I even put the little clasps, those pieces, over top of it to make it look like it's supposed to be there. So that's okay. Now on the machine guns, which again are plastic in this case, I wimped out because the machine guns in the kit don't look like Lewis machine guns. So I wimped out and used some old plastic ones. But the front one needs a chute containment bag, or a spent casing containment bag, because those would have gone off from the front and run into the propellers and broken the propellers, and they would have shot themselves down. So I took a piece of Kleenex and I'm cutting it and trying to put some white glue on it and sort of twisting it with tweezers and making it look like a bag. It's very small, but it still is a little detail that I think is useful, because on the real airplane there must have been something there, because the propellers are right there behind the guy. So anyway, put those on, and then um, sort of I'm putting glue over it to make it harden, and so you can sort of twist it and turn it and fold it almost like an accordion into a different shape that you happen to like. You do this on like tank models when you're making tarps and stuff for a tank or even a car, or a Jeep or something. Once that's done, you just add a little glue and glue it right to the side of the gun where the casings would come out, the spent casings would come out. Here I'm finding where that is, putting a little glue there. And the white glue again is nice because it'll disappear if you make too much on. And then you just go ahead and pop that on there and let it dry. And it's a tiny detail. If someone's looking for it, they'll see it, or if they go, oh look, that's a neat little piece of detail. But it's not a major thing. It's nothing that is going to make or break the model. But again, it was going so well, I decided why not. And then I painted it ultimately with that light tan color to make it look like a little bit of an actual piece. Now, here's what I spent most of my last week doing, is putting the bomb racks together. Now these are all pieces of wood. Then these pieces of paper are wrapped around and glued around them. And you can see there's a lot of components to put this together. It looks like this. These are the directions. So those are going to be for the main bombs. There should be four main bombs. And then you've got these little ones that are for smaller bombs that fit under the wings. The 4 big bombs are under the fuselage, right at the center of gravity. So you can see there's slots that are cut out there. And all I did for the big bombs is put a little bit of super glue in those slots, and I glued these big C's, these big clamps, into their spots. And what I found interesting about this bomb rack was that it looks okay when it's done, and it's accurate, I suppose. I don't know anything about Vickers Vimy bomb racks, but they went to all the trouble to make the wood be covered, or the cardboard originally to be covered with their pieces of wood that fold around it. You can see they fold very nicely, and you got it all colored. Looks great. But there's huge areas that are going to be open, whether it's cardboard or in my case wood, and those have to be painted. So I don't really understand part of unless they thought that would all be hidden by bombs. But in my case, I didn't make a bunch of bombs. So I started doing the smaller racks. They have a couple of little cutouts on those ribs, and you have to carefully follow the picture, and you start gluing these things together. So the piece in my left hand there is the rack itself where the little bombs would attach to, and then the airfoil piece is going to be going to fit up underneath the wing nicely. So there they are, 2 of them, and then you have a second piece that goes in the back, and just sort of making sure they're kind of straight, perpendicular, making sure the racks aren't rolled or something. And then once they're good, I do them a little zip kicker just to make sure they're together. There you go. There's one done, and you got to do 6,000 more. But you can see that's where they go, and those little white spots, those attach to these pieces, to those spots. And so those are going to be, I'm attaching those now, but those are going to be what ends up going underneath the fuselage. And again, you got to follow the little plan carefully, because there's an up and a down and a left and a right. And so you got to make sure you do it correctly. Again, you can see by my thumb there that there's open balsa wood that's going to have to be painted, because that's going to be the underneath, and that's going to be where you're going to look, where you're going to see stuff. And it's weird to me, just because the other side you're not going to see. It's up against the bottom of the airplane, but that part is covered with the paper. So, and there's no other way to put it together. So I'm kind of confused as to why that happened. Anyway, the other rack, small rack, goes in those other 2 little spots. Put a little glue on each of those, and pop it on there. Now you could do this like a balsa wood model, and be very careful with it and make it straight and pin things down, and it would probably go together easier. I'm just doing this freehand in the air, and it worked, but and it was straight enough. Believe me, it's fine. But you know, if you really wanted to be careful, you could do this over a piece of plastic wrap so nothing would stick, and put it on a cork board or something, and go ahead and do it that way, and then everything would be assured to be flat and square and true, etc., etc. And now I'm putting this last little trailing piece on here, which is actually the way it's sitting right now. Those are the sides. So as it's facing, let's see, it's going to go. Those pieces I just put on have a little a thin and a thick section to them. You can see their one end is wider than the other. Those are what's going to fit under the wing, and they fit under the camber of the lower wing. So there's one, and that's all done. But again, see that part looks fine. But then when you turn it over, look at all that white stuff that you have to paint. And then there's the other side you got to do. And then there are the big bomb racks. And again, that's the side that points down. And I'm just a little surprised that it worked, but I'm going to have to do a lot of painting afterwards. And there they are, fast forward, all finished. They look great. They're straight. They look nice. And they're just, again, follow the pictures. And then when we put them on the airplane, you got to make sure you put them on the right orientation too. There's a 3-view that you can follow to make sure that you have it correct in terms of which way it goes. But yeah, their long way is where they're going to fit. And I'm just saying there, look at all that white. So now, mounting these racks is the next part. So I did these first because they were the easiest. Turns out I missed a piece. See that piece there with a little white dot in the middle? That is supposed to fit on the bottom of the fuselage, and you can see those little tiny lines there. That's where each of these little notches fit. So each of them fits right like that. Boom. Just like that. So they'll all fit. All 4 of them fit right across, and they fit nice. They're gonna, they don't run into each other. Everything's straight. They look fine. But it's something that isn't really called for in the plans. That piece, that wooden piece, you're supposed to put down underneath the wing, but I didn't know what it was for, and I thought it was part of the, how the central spar on the wing went in, and I didn't do that. I did my own thing. Now, what I decided was it goes right there, but then I realized that little white dot, that's where the that skid is supposed to go, and I already put the skid in by drilling a little hole in the bottom. So that's my fault. And so to put that up against where it's supposed to go, I had to cut these out. So that made more work for myself. I cut out the little center section and then just put these little rack holders on either side. That way they're in line where they're supposed to be. Had I done it correctly, that would have been down there. You would have drilled a hole, and that's the hole that little tiny dot, that little hole is where you're supposed to put the rear skid strut there. So oh well, live and learn. The next one I build, I'll do it the right way. So all I do is put these in. They fit nicely on either side. You just make sure they're straight and flat, and don't do that. And once they dry, then they're ready to add the racks. So put some glue on the other side and do the very same thing. Add it down there. Looks fine. And make sure again that it's straight, because it has to be. That's where the main bomb rack is going to fit. And then I believe all I do here is zip kick it a bit just to make sure it stays and it's good. You also get a good view of the nose skid. The nose skid looks great, and the step that I put on there. So now these will just fit right along the line, and they'll just glue on that front piece right where they're supposed to go. Like I said, there's little lines that show you where they're supposed to go. And then I cut out the notch, and they'll just go right across there. One on either root, and then 2 more in the center. And they just fit really nice. And the trailing edge there, there's supposed to be a little piece of wood too, it turns out, but I didn't bother putting it on. I didn't even see it until the very end. And so that's okay. No one's going to hold the airplane upside down constantly. The other 2 go in there, and then that'll be it. So there it is together, the central ones. And you can see with those big C hooks, that's where the main bombs are going to go. And what I'll do is, these are for the little bombs that go on either side. Now, you have to make sure that you put them in the right orientation. There is a right and a left, meaning when you look at them from the front, there's a slope that needs to be on them. And you just look at the 3-view and figure out which way it's supposed to go. and just make sure you do that. And you're going to glue those in. They match up essentially to the middle racks, and those just glue to the bottom surface. And there they are glued, and they look just fine, matched up, and you can see where everything's supposed to go, and you see the pegs where the little bombs are supposed to go. And again, the weirdness is all that has to be painted, and so I just used some light tan and painted all those things. Now, last thing I was working on here, or one of the last things, is the bombs. I just put 2 of the big bombs on there. So these are the parts to it. Those are little fins. Those are fin supports. There's the back end of the bomb. That's a part that the little spinner goes on, that little piece right there. And then the main casing is here, complete with a pedal design, which is the bane of my existence. But I thought I would show you how to put this together, because it actually has a lot of good paper modeling skills thrown in there, like rolling these. Neil at Neil's Paper Models, he does a really good job of showing you how to make curves. He doesn't spare detail. He actually shows you what he's doing, which is good. So I thought, I should do that, because this is sort of the, don't show it finished, actually show doing it. So you roll that around and preform it and get it into the place where it's supposed to go. In this case, along that white slot there. This is the rear section, by the way. And once you get it on there and it starts to dry, then switch your tweezers to grab it so that you can squeeze it shut and make sure the glue starts to do its thing. So that is good. Oh, you use bigger tweezers here just to make sure it's nice and squished on there. Looks good. The next piece we're going to put on is a little ring that goes on the smaller end. And that ring, by the way, was cut out with that new super awesome tool, that Japanese hole punch that I'm now using and worth its weight in gold. So I did that, put some glue around the edge, and then go ahead and take that ring and stick it on there. Like I said, the ring is very nicely done with that cutter. It's just beautiful. That goes there. And the center of that is supposed to be another rolled piece of paper that's going to be the attachment point for the little propeller that goes in the back. I guess that's the arming propeller. However, I couldn't roll those to make them look good, so I cheated and just put the butt end of a toothpick in there. And that seemed to be fine. I just put it out so that it's a little proud, so that when you put the little propeller piece on there, it sits nice. Excuse me. So then I just add a little bit of glue, take my little propeller, arming propeller, and drop it on the center, making sure that it's clean. All the white lines, by the way, are going to be painted out soon, so don't panic about those. Then I figured, okay, now here comes the part that's enjoyable, making this thing. So initially, it's easy. It's a cylinder. However, those pedals are fun to do. Start with rolling this in your hand or on a soft piece of material somewhere, and you just roll it until you get it close to touching and the cylinder being closed. And then what I do with these, this is big enough to do this with, and it's easy enough to handle. Things that are really small diameter, I haven't figured out how to do those yet, but these work pretty well. Making sure I'm getting it all curved and making sure that it's already being, you're training the paper. Now what I do is roll it together, and I sort of roll it. See how the pieces are actually, it's thinner than it's going to be. But if I roll that together for a little bit and kind of, again, train the paper, then when I let it go, it basically springs back to where it's supposed to be. That's a key to all these paper models, is that you make the paper first, do the shape you want as best you can, and then you add it. Because the paper turns out it can be, not exactly, but almost molded if you're really good. Use toothpicks, use anything, little round pieces, something to form the shape. But now it's close, and there's a little white piece down there, that strip that's going to add some glue to that. And then you do the same thing as before. You add you squeeze the pieces together once you line up the flap along that white piece. And sorry about the camera work, I'm right on the edge there, but trust me, it worked. And just making sure things line up before you squeeze, because that's difficult. This size is just about perfect. This is a good size to work on. So this everyone, I think, could do this. This isn't impossible by any means. But anyway, make sure this is squeezed nice and tight and let it dry. Go have a drink or something. Here I rolled from the inside just to make sure it's making contact. And there it is. So now the next thing to tackle is the pedal. So I'm still just making sure that it's formed correctly. But the next thing to tackle is the pedal, and the pedal is not a huge pedal. But here's what I did. I used my little tool there, round tool, and all I did was move it forward and I rolled it around, moving forward. And what that's doing is causing those pedals to sort of reshape and come towards a point. Not exactly, but the harder you push, the more the things are going to bend. So I'm giving very light pressure and just going around multiple times. And that's going to give you can see they're starting to curve like a claw together. And then, this is usually where I panic and everything goes to pot. But what I decided to do, which is very gently, twist this thing in my fingers and sort of squeeze them together and just do this many, many times. Also, I form my fingers into a little pocket, and what I'm doing now is pushing and turning, pushing very gently and turning. That motion is enough to bring those pedals together a little bit more. There's actually a way, and you can see it's already starting to come together. There's a way that you do that with a little tool, a handmade tool, which I think I'll try and show you because it has worked for me before, but I couldn't find my tool. But it does the same thing. Here I experimented with a straw with some pieces cut out of it to be a thing that I could twist, but then when I cut out those little pieces on the straw, it just bit into it, so I just went over here. And again, I'm pushing and turning. This didn't work as well as I'd hoped, but I'm trying to figure out a way to do this so that it could be something that works every time. But each time you do that, it starts to get closer and closer. It's just a matter of being very careful here. And if you put them in too tight, you can go from the back and kind of push them out. But this take me to get them together to where I started to add glue and make them nice. Took, I don't know, 10 minutes of just doing this, rolling it, pulling it, and then my fingers, my thumb and forefinger and my middle finger on my, I guess, left hand, just very carefully kind of twisting it and pulling it closed very gently. Very gently. And here I'm adding a little white glue into the inside and forming it again, and I'm just kind of just very gently kind of teasing it together with the turning motion, and also by sort of almost like pulling it towards. You can see I'm tapping it and I'm bringing it basically towards the end. You're trying to get those ends to come together. It doesn't look like you're doing anything, but if you keep looking, you realize it's getting closer and closer and closer together. And then if you add glue in there, now you're starting to have the glue make attachment points, and you start to actually form the pedal design, and it kind of worked. And I sped it up because that was about 6-8 minutes of time. Then I dropped some super glue down into the tip. The idea there was I wanted to make the tip nice and hard, and you can see I'm just making sure it's still doing what it's supposed to do. And then I'm making sure that the glue is down there touching those pedals, being very careful not to, blow it out, blow through it or something. You don't want to do that. But right now, if you look at it carefully, the tip has come in together, and there's a very tiny hole, but not much. It looks pretty good. Now again, if I was Polish or Czech or German or anything, and was good at this, I have a feeling that you can bring this together and you wouldn't see a seam hardly. I mean, you'd see the lines, but anyway, you can see that hole is very tiny. That's good enough for my American sensibilities, because it's hard to do. Then I hit this with a little bit of zip kicker, and that sinks in and helps harden the super glue in there. And now the tip is pretty good. Again, not quite up to the highest standards, but it looks a lot better than pedal designs I've done before. What I usually do at this point is fill them and sand them and repaint them, but I didn't want to do that on this one. So now I put the rear cone on with the little arming propeller, and that just fits on like so. This one, as I recall, was, I think the cylinder was a little bit small, but it worked. Now we start these fins. Now they have little feet on them that I add glue to, and then there's little indentations or little notations on the bomb that show where they're supposed to go, which is great. because they do fit nice and they fit good and they're straight. If I did it again, I would just cut those tabs off completely. You don't need them, and then just butt join the fins on. You don't really need those extra pieces, I don't think. I think to me they kind of, they're okay, but they add, unless that's the way they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be flanges down there. I don't know, but I would just cut them off and add them directly to the side. Again, the white's all going to be fixed anyway, going to be painted. So here I'm making sure these little tabs are turned and are flat. So I'm grabbing the edge and I'm making sure with my little thumb that I've got these flat pieces that are going to act as glue points. And again, it's not ideal unless I know nothing about World War I aerial bombs, so maybe it's supposed to look like that. So put a little glue on them and just add them. There's 4 of them to put on. And again, as long as you line everything up and then you put them on where they're supposed to go, everything is perfect. It lines up. You don't have to worry about things looking really wonky. Once they're on, there are these little stabilizer shroud things that are added. Those are little tiny skinny folded pieces of paper. So they're folded in half essentially, and they make these little girder looking things with ends. You put glue on the ends and you dop them in. You can see those little black dots where they're supposed to go. And from the plans, it looked like there were only 2 on each side. They didn't go all the way around, which I thought they'd go all the way around through all the fins. But anyway, this is what I did. But here's the thing. Here it is. I've painted all the edges a green that's close, and doesn't look bad. And the pedal looks pretty good. It looks like a bomb. There's a fellow named Ricardo who does amazing paper models. He does all the ordnance on airplanes, and they look like plastic models. Definitely doesn't look like mine. But there's one that's already in. And now all I do here is ham-handedly stick a bunch of glue in here. But it's supposed to be there, and I put a nice big blob on either piece. And then you just slide the bomb in. And just has to be stuck in there and glued. And you can see they look pretty convincing when they're on there. Not bad. Again, if I did it again, I would probably fill them and sand them and repaint them and make them look less funny kind of green color. And here I put this one in, and it turns out I don't have it right. So then I don't have it. I had to twist it a little bit. You want the seam to be underneath so you don't see it. But I have mine, the fins aren't aligned there. Now they're aligned with the other bomb. So when I look at it from dead on, it looks pretty good. So that's what it looks like. There's the underneath. And that's all I'm putting on there because the bombs were a challenge for me anyway. And I know they're there. There's bombs as an example, and that's good enough. So, there it is. And, she's basically done. The next video should be the final reveal.